Heartbreak to fireworks. Collin and I were sitting at our favorite table in our favorite bar, sipping drinks and joking around. Friend, and we both burst into laughter. Okay, this is probably the moment I thought in an instant. I stopped laughing. I'm breaking up with you, I said. Collin looked at me, surprised and amused. He probably thought that I was joking, and that I didn't understand the joke. What do you mean? He asked, still in a great mood. I mean exactly what I said, I replied calmly. I'm breaking up with you. You're a despicable jerk, Collin. You've been cheating on me for almost 4 months. You're disgusting. By the way, cheating is one thing, but the way he was hiding it is another. Collin could have simply said that he had to stay late for work, like all the cheating partners do. But no, even while betraying me, he cared about his image. He told me he would become a volunteer in a kitchen for the homeless, or that he was going to visit the sick grandmother at the hospital. In reality, he was meeting someone else during that time. He would come home and tell me about how his grandma was feeling. She was actually completely healthy and strong. You said you wanted us to move to a bigger apartment, I continued. You said you wanted to get a dog with me. Christ, Collin. We even went to the shelter, and at the same time you were telling the exact same things to another man. Throughout my entire speech, Collin looked at his drink and clenched his lips. I could see that he couldn't bear this humiliation, and honestly, I felt great about it. I'm sorry, Mike, Collin finally said. I just fell in love with someone else. What can I say? I want to spend my life with Eric. At that moment, Eric, who had been hiding at the table in the corner, joined us. Collin turned pale. I didn't think I had ever seen him so terrified. His entire life, his intricate web of lies, was falling apart. Well, this is an awkward situation, Eric laughed. Exactly as he had planned. You see, Collin, the problem is that I'm also breaking up with you. Collin started shifting his gaze between us. He was in shock. It was the first time he saw us together. He probably wondering what to do now, to get out of the situation with least damage. Eric, Collin finally said, I love you. I made a mistake. I know I wanted to tell you. I was just too afraid of losing you. I hated myself for it. I swear I thought it was terrible, pathetic. Sure, Eric replied with a smile, casually lighting a cigarette. I get it. I have similar feelings towards you. Please forgive me, Collin continued, as if he hadn't heard him. Eric just shook his head with amusement. Finish your drink, I told Collin. You'd better leave. Your things have been packed in boxes in front of our door for the past 2 hours. So if I were you, I'd hurry. I mean, unless you want to risk your clothes, records, books, and all that. Collin looked at us with tears in his eyes. It was clear that he wanted to know how all of this happened, how we found out about each other. Why did he get caught? When exactly did he stumble? But of course, he didn't have the courage to ask. He wouldn't be able to listen to us any longer. I'm sorry, he said once again. And then he left, leaving his unfinished drink on the table. Damn, I said when Collin was already gone. That was unpleasant. Can I have a cigarette? Sure, take one, Eric replied. Let me tell you, Mike, I had a great time. Okay, so how did it all happen? Well, Collin and I met when we were 26. We worked at the same IT company, and something clicked between us, right from the first team building meeting. We flirted with each other sometimes, went out together, but mostly in a larger group. At first, it wasn't anything serious. Then I changed jobs. I was afraid of losing contact with Collin, but no, we still had plenty of mutual friends. I went to the same parties, and we were in the same industry, so we saw each other all the time, and eventually, we got together. We moved in together after 4 months of dating, and it was great. I had never gotten along with anyone so well before. Sometimes we went on long bike trips or kayak adventures, and sometimes we spent the entire weekend cuddling in bed and ordering takeout. We met each other's families and old friends. Everything indicated that it would be a lifelong relationship. And then suddenly, Collin started acting weird. He would come home later and tell me these unbelievable stories about volunteering, his sick grandma, or running into an old friend in the street. He would leave the house or take phone calls, although he never did that before. He even had the most private conversations in front of me. When he put his phone on the table, he always made sure the screen was facing down. He started smelling like cigarettes, although he never smoked. One day, I even found boxers in our closet that I was almost certain didn't belong to him or me. You know, all the classic signs of suspicious behavior. But I was slow to suspect. I still fully trusted Collin, and besides, everything in our relationship seemed fine. We enjoyed spending time together, we were affectionate and loving, interested in each other's lives, and I had great sex. But there were more and more signs that something was going on. I have to go away for the weekend, Collin said one day as we were having coffee after lunch. My Uncle Larry needs help with renovating his house. You know, he's an older guy, and I don't want him to do it alone. Of course, that was so typical of Collin. He always seemed helpful and kind. Or at least that's how he'd like to appear. Sure, that's nice of you, I said. Maybe I could come with you? I don't have any plans and I'd be happy to help too. Plus, Uncle Larry lives in such a beautiful area. We could go for some walks and relax. You know what? Maybe not, Colin replied immediately. It's going to be really hard work, roof replacement and all that. I don't have the energy for leisurely walks. Well then, I'll be even more willing to help. I don't want you to struggle with it alone. The conversation was getting really strange. Even with all my naivety and trust, I started to have suspicions. Oh, Mike, don't push it, Colin sighed. Maybe we could spend 2 days apart. I'll spend some time with my family and come back to you, okay? Okay, sure, I said. Because what else could I say? But when Colin went out for a quick grocery run, I visited the website of Uncle Larry's transportation company. Feeling ridiculous, I dialed the number listed there. Uncle Larry answered. I'd only talked to him once. I think it was on Colin's parents' anniversary, but I recognized his voice immediately. Hello, I said. It's Mike, Colin's boyfriend. Oh, Mike, Uncle Larry exclaimed happily. Nice of you to call. But wait, nothing's wrong, right? Everything's fine with you guys? Yeah, everything's okay with us. I was just wondering if I should come and help with the cottage renovation. Colin mentioned that he's planning to visit you. Maybe you could use an extra pair of hands. Cottage renovation? Larry sounded surprised. I'm planning to do that in the spring, Mike. You must have misunderstood something. Colin's so chaotic, he probably got it wrong. Yeah, probably, I laughed, feeling the panic rise within me. Well, sorry for bothering you unnecessarily. Have a great day, Larry. We hung up a moment later. I sat on the couch, holding my phone and stared blankly into space. So Colin was cheating on me? Now, I could be certain for some reason. I didn't confront him. I let him go away for the weekend, and when he came back, I pretended that everything was fine. I didn't know what I was waiting for. Maybe I was just scared to break up with him. I was afraid of that conversation. I waited for Colin to make another mistake. That would push me to end things. After a few days, he did make a mistake. While he was in the shower, he left his laptop on with the Messenger app open in another window. I immediately rushed to the computer. I had never done anything like this before. Reading someone's texts or emails, I felt like a traitor, even though I was the one being betrayed. The first conversation that appeared was with Eric. I vaguely remembered the guy. He was a computer graphics artist and had worked on some project with my old company. I had never seen him in person or spoken with him, but I knew we had mutual acquaintances. In the photo, he didn't look like Colin's type, but for some reason I knew it was him. He was the one Colin was cheating on me with. I scrolled through the conversation. In fact, I didn't even need to read it. The emojis, hearts, winks, and even those cringy eggplant emojis were enough. I felt sick to my stomach. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the screen. I scrolled and scrolled. Quickly, I discovered that Colin and Eric weren't just lovers. They were more than that. They talked about how their day went, their work problems, and fights with their siblings. Christ, they were even planning a vacation together. For 3 months of conversations, they hadn't mentioned my name once. With a pounding heart, I closed the laptop as I heard Colin coming out of the bathroom. He had one towel wrapped around his waist and was drying his hair with another. Under normal circumstances, I would have gone to kiss him. Everything okay? Colin asked when he saw that I hadn't moved from my spot. Yeah, I'm fine, I confirmed robotically. I feel just a bit sick. Maybe I ate something off. So maybe you should lie down. I'll make you some tea. I shook my head. I couldn't listen to Colin's voice anymore, and I wouldn't have to listen to it for much longer. Colin left the apartment. He had a shift at the homeless kitchen. As soon as Colin left, I found Eric on Facebook and messaged him. Why? I just felt like he might not even know I existed. He could be as used and deceived as I was. Of course, I was angry with him, but I knew those were just emotions, and they could be baseless. Maybe Eric hadn't done anything wrong. Hey, I simply wrote, this is Colin's boyfriend. That was enough. What the fuck? Eric replied immediately. We've been together for 2.5 years, I continued. Lately, I noticed some strange behavior from him, so I checked his Messenger account. I saw messages with you. Oh God, Eric replied after about 10 minutes. I'm so sorry. I've been seeing Collin for 4 months. He never mentioned you. I figured. Can we meet and talk about this? Of course, I understand if you don't want to see me in person. I was surprised by his proposition. What did Eric and I have to say to each other? But I agreed without hesitation. Call it masochism. But I wanted to know who the person Collin was cheating on me with. We met at a random bar far from the city center, just to make sure we wouldn't run into Collin or any of his friends here. I arrived first and waited for Eric at a table in the corner. When he walked in, I recognized him immediately. Okay, Collin, I understand you, I thought right away. Because Eric was beautiful, not just handsome, but truly beautiful. Tall, slim, pale, with black hair and blue eyes. He looked like a vampire from a young adult novel, or some kind of French poet, that kind. I never thought he would be Collin's type, especially since I had blonde hair and a tan, and muscular build. But one thing I was sure of, Eric was perfectly my type. Hey, Eric said, approaching my table. You must be Mike, right? Listen, again, I'm really sorry. I feel horrible about it. Forget it, I shook my head. We're in the same situation. He smiled sympathetically at me and sat down. He immediately lit a cigarette, and I noticed how long and slender his fingers were. I know smoking is unhealthy and all, but God, it was really attractive when Eric casually flicked the ash and played with the cigarette. Does it bother you that I smoke? He asked, following my gaze. No, not at all. I just looked away for a moment. I replied immediately, embarrassed. I think we should break up with Collin at the same time. Eric got us straight to the point. Arrange to meet him in a bar, pretend everything is fine, chat, joke, flirt, and then just break up with him when he least expects it. And then I'll step in and I'll break up with him too. Actually, I haven't even thought about whether I want to break up with him yet, I said honestly, surprisingly. That thought hadn't crossed my mind yet. Eric looked surprised. Really? He asked, looking a bit disappointed. Okay, well, it's your decision, but breaking up with him simultaneously would be something. I laughed. I see you've concocted an elaborate plan for revenge, I said. Yeah, well, I'm a Scorpio. What can I say? Sorry, but that doesn't mean anything to me, I shook my head. I know nothing about astrology. I don't even know what my zodiac sign is. Are you kidding? Eric said, suddenly deadly serious. What kind of gay guy are you if you don't know your zodiac sign? When were you born? May 12th. Okay, so you're a Taurus. Of course, I should have figured. Do you know what that means? We have great astrological compatibility. And how's our astrological compatibility with Collin? I asked. Maybe just to remind Eric why we were meeting. Oh baby, forget about it, Eric replied. Collin is a Virgo. The fact that we were even involved with him was some kind of act of penance on our part. Tell me since you lived with him, he's probably a terrible neat freak and obsessed with order, right? He wouldn't even let me leave a newspaper on the table because he believed the countertop should always be empty. We both laughed, still with some remnants of affection for Collin. Eric had a nice but somewhat peculiar smile. Only one corner of his mouth lifted, which made him look very confident and a bit malicious. I caught myself staring at his lips a bit too long. God, Mike, calm down. After all, you're looking at the man Collin cheated on you with. But honestly, during the next hour and a half of the meeting, I didn't feel like I was sitting across from the person Collin chose over me. I felt more like I was with a friend, or maybe even on a date. It was pleasant. We talked about mutual friends, our work in the old company, and various little quirks of Collin. Eventually, we decided that both of us would break up with him, just as Eric suggested. As I left the bar, I felt sad, not only because I was about to end my longest relationship so far, but also because after that, I would never see Eric again. I thought that under different circumstances, we could become friends. Later, as I mentioned before, we broke up with Collin. We celebrated with one more drink together, and our paths diverged. Time passed. Sometimes I caught myself thinking about Eric more often than Collin. It felt strange. I guess I had a sense of guilt. Towards the end of the year, I was invited to a New Year's Eve party by a friend, Rita. She said there would be plenty of people, so I immediately accepted the invitation. I needed a lively party. I decided not to bring a +1, as someone would surely come my way during the party. And that's exactly what happened. But let me go in order. I arrived at Rita's apartment late because I didn't take the snowstorm into account. It was almost 11:20 p.m. Everyone was already in the midst of the celebration, and I felt like a bit of an intruder. I thought you weren't coming, Rita said, greeting me at the door. Then she handed me a drink and left me alone to return to her interrupted conversation. Suddenly I felt like going to the party was a bad idea. Maybe I should have stayed at home. I stood alone in the hallway with a distasteful drink in my hand and snow in my hair. And I felt truly miserable, lonely. I didn't know anyone here, and I didn't feel like engaging in conversation. Last year I spent New Year's with Collin, and now I missed him. I started to wonder if Rita would be upset with me if I just left. And maybe I would have done that, but then I heard a familiar voice say, well, 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 who do we have here? And in front of me, leaning against the wall, was, you guessed it, Eric. He looked even more enchanting than the previous 2 times I saw him. He wore black leather pants, a silver top, a string of pearls around his neck, and dark makeup that emphasized his blue eyes. I was in jeans and a t-shirt. Isn't this my boyfriend's boyfriend? Eric smirked, and then he hugged me in greeting. How are you, Mike? He asked. Fine, I lied. Are you sure? You don't look too good. Thanks, I muttered, and I changed the subject. I didn't know you knew Rita. I used to work with her. She's a graphic designer too, right? Are you close? Not at all. I saw her last about a year ago. Honestly, I would have chosen a different party, but I heard you might be here. I didn't expect such overt flirtation. I didn't know how to react, so I just smiled and took a sip out of my drink. Let's not stand in the hallway, Eric said as if he were the host. Come with me for a smoke. What, in this cold? You won't freeze. Besides, it's good for your health. Smoking? But he didn't answer. He just gave me a mischievous look and headed towards the balcony. Of course I followed him. I felt like he was magnetically pulling me in. As expected, we were the only ones who ventured out into the balcony, in minus 10-degree weather. We leaned against the railing and looked at the illuminated city. Eric lit one cigarette after another. Do you have any New Year's resolutions? He asked me. Nothing specific, I shrugged. I just want it to be a good year. Oh, don't worry about that. I read it'll be a good year for Tauruses. As for us Scorpios, well, we're screwed as usual. I was touched that he remembered my zodiac sign. He must have been listening to me much more attentively than I suspected. Despite the cold, we stood at the balcony for another half hour telling each other about our lives. Eventually, when I felt my feet were about to freeze, Rita called us inside to join everyone in counting down to midnight. Finally, I thought, this horrible year is ending. I noticed people looking at their partners to kiss them at midnight. I completely forgot about this tradition. A girl I had never seen before came up to me and gave me half-questioning, half-flirtatious look. Apparently, she also didn't have anyone to kiss. Sorry, sweetheart, Eric addressed her before I could even gather my thoughts. This charming gentleman will be kissing me at midnight. Oh my god, sorry, the girl giggled. In that case, Happy New Year's, guys. And she turned to some random acquaintance to kiss her at midnight. I looked at Eric. He shrugged and smiled in that confident, charming way, lifting just one corner of his mouth. I felt my knees go weak. Okay, fine, I said, even though he didn't ask me anything. It was 11:58 p.m., 2 minutes to midnight. Eric and I locked eyes and slowly moved closer to each other. Eric no longer smiled. He looked at me with a hungry, passionate gaze. The air was hot and electrifying. 11:59 p.m. I couldn't hold back. I kissed Eric and pressed myself against him. Everything was touch. I heard the fireworks and people in the background shouting, 10, 9, 8, but it didn't matter to me. We started kissing 1 minute before midnight and continued long after. After the New Year's Eve party, I returned to my apartment, tipsy, happy, and excited. I felt like I had just experienced my first kiss in life. Back when I was 15 and barely understood what had just happened, I had the urge to call all my friends and tell them that I had just kissed the most stunning, amazing guy in the world. Quickly, it turned out that I didn't need to call anyone. The news spread fast when I woke up around noon. I already had a text from Collin on Messenger. It went something like this. I'm extremely disappointed in how you've been acting since we broke up. Kissing Eric despite me? Seriously? Nevertheless, I wish you a happy new year. We've both done a lot of wrong things, but I'll always wish you well. I didn't know what wrong things I had done to Collin. I just replied that I also wished him a happy new year. At the same moment, a message from Eric came to me. I had a great time last night / today. Not sure if you consider it a typical party, casual, or if you'd like to hang out sometime. Let me know. I swear, if it wasn't for the hangover, I would have jumped in the bed with joy. I usually try to reply to guys after about 20 minutes to avoid looking desperate, but I replied to Eric right away. Sure, I'd love to go out sometime. I had a great time too. Cool, Eric replied. I heard they recently opened a new pizzeria downtown. I assume as a perpetually hungry Taurus, you might be interested. 2 days later, we actually went out for pizza. This time, we didn't talk about Collin. We simply shared stories about ourselves. After that, everything happened very quickly. We started seeing each other more and more, going out for food, drinks, movies, or even to art galleries if we felt like a more fancy date. Most of our meetings ended up in my apartment, and one day, Eric just didn't leave. After about a month, I realized that we were officially living together. There were 2 toothbrushes in my cup in the bathroom again, and an ashtray appeared on the balcony. A pair of boxers I found in the closet was now accompanied by several others in a similar style. So, well, what can I say? Looking back, I honestly couldn't be happier about being cheated on. The end. What do you think about being in a relationship with someone who shares an ex with you? Would that make things too complicated for you? Let us know what you think in the comments down below. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become part of our Rainbow Force, and stay wholesome.